I have an amazing guest today on the podcast. It is my lovely and dear friend, Kam Lota from Soulchemy. She has also been one of my most incredible clients in the past as well. And I just thought I have to get Kam onto the podcast because she is the most, I would say, spiritually aligned person that I know. She has so much knowledge when it comes to spirituality and all things spiritual. And I just feel like with me going on my own spiritual journey over the last few years, I know that spirituality overall has helped me so much in my business because I do believe there is a higher power out there than ourselves. And I just thought it'd be great to bring Kam on. So Kam, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here, Sian. I'm so excited to be here today.
So excited to have you. So let's just rewind a little bit, Kam, and talk a little bit about your backstory and how did you become spiritual? Because I'm assuming you weren't always like this.
The thing is, I think I kind of was.
Yeah.
You know, when I just remember really, really clearly when I was 9 years old, 9 years old, picking up a book of my uncle's. And it was all about the energy body, spiritual concepts. And my little mind was just trying to get my head around it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the concepts, but that was my first moment where I thought, interesting. And then fast forward, I was a child who loved magic, magical things, mystery, all the things that were quite out there, just felt really, really normal. So I then started meditating in my early to late teens, around 18.
Yeah.
And what actually started happening is I was getting then what we now call downloads, but it just felt like too much information coming in. So I shut that down, and I shut it down for quite a while. And then, your studies were happening then. So you just continued. And from there, I didn't think any more about it until I was on holiday. And I thought, oh, this sounds interesting. I'll book a Reiki session. By then, I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
And I think it just opened that side of me up again. And from that point on, I just felt really, really connected to using an energy that I couldn't see to really, really benefit everything around me, like my whole life. So as they say, this is how we started. And I don't think there's been a day since that I haven't used Reiki.
Yeah, that is so amazing to hear. And when you said about divine downloads, when they were coming through kind of thick and fast in like your late teens, like what did that kind of look like? Like what was happening?
Oh, well, I was sitting down for, a couple of, sometimes minutes, sometimes an hour would pass at a time. And it was just literally too much information coming in, too much kind of universal information.
Yeah.
There was just so much information that was incoming, and my nervous system didn't know how to handle it at that time. So I completely shut off.
And was it visuals, Kam, or was it visual information? So things that you could see?
Yes. So usually, Sian, when things come to me, they usually in their visual form, then I have to try and find words to fit around those visuals to explain. So yeah, definitely visual. And it was just like, whoa, incoming too fast. I can't deal with this.
Yeah, because I know I've had a couple of sessions with you and I just always feel like our sessions are just so amazing, but also there's always weird stuff that happens. I remember once the light was flickering. Well, it wasn't actually. And I was like, is your light flickering? And you were like, no, but I'm like, I can see something flickering. Like, what is that? And you were like, yeah, it's just the energy. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember like having a Reiki session with you once before. And oh my God, like the next day I looked like I'd had a facelift. Like the energy from my face looked so amazing. So just talk us through like, what kind of things do you offer? Obviously you offer Reiki. Just what other offerings do you have?
Okay, so thank you. And yeah, energy is just so potent and so powerful. In terms of other things I offer, so the one-to-one Reiki, I do group Reiki, as you know, because, you know, we amplify intentions when we come together for a common cause and for, you know, the actual energy session. The other thing that I do and that I'm really, really passionate about, and I was called to around 3 years ago, was the sound healing. So it's moving deeper and deeper into this understanding that actually the whole of the universe is energy, frequency, vibration. So using those to really interact with your energy body then takes those vibrations and frequencies and it is reflected in the physical body. And the other thing I do once I open that faculty back up again is channeled meditations. And those tend to be really, really powerful. And I call them meditations. They're meditation journeys.
Yeah. That sounds amazing. And Kam, with yourself, like obviously you're Sikh.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes there can be this clash of, you know, Sikhism and spirituality, but obviously you're quite, you know, like religious, like not really religious, but you believe in Sikhism.
Yeah.
How did you find, because I think sometimes like people worry about spirituality.
Yes.
And they worry like, I remember when I first started getting into spirituality and started like this big journey, and it would be like lots of different things I would do, like rituals, but also it was a mindset as well.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, and I think people just think actually that's a bit weird, like that's a bit woo-woo, that's a bit out there, like that doesn't work. Yeah. Like how did you kind of navigate like the two, like holding the two, I guess, the two dualities? Because you can be religious, but you can actually be spiritual. And I think sometimes they can be the same things, but sometimes they're not. Yeah. So how have you found it, like people around you reacting to that?
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a really, really good question. And as you know, I am a practicing Sikh and I absolutely love being Sikh and my religion this lifetime round. And I say this lifetime round, I do remember a few more, but that's for another conversation. And, you know, we have here myself a practicing Sikh and here my spirituality. And the way that I explain this to, or the way that I feel about this is that before I was Sikh, before I have attached to this identity in this lifetime, before that, I was something else. And before that, I was something else. And before that, I was something else. Because I truly do believe in reincarnation. Yeah. And I remember a few of my past lives. And, you know, this lifetime, I identify as Kam. And I'm Sikh, but also from a spiritual perspective, I'm a soul that's been around and I may not have been Sikh before. There's some lifetimes where I remember I wasn't Sikh. So it's kind of like pulling yourself back from your identity and seeing yourself as a full soul that you are. Yeah. And when you are aware of that, there's this instant kind of harmony between what you're practicing here, but knowing that your soul practice is just so much bigger than just your religion in this lifetime round. And as I say, I absolutely love it. Yeah. But also there's just this bigger umbrella of spirituality. And that's how I see it.
And how are people around you, like, when you came onto this spiritual path, like were people quite accepting? Like, what was the reaction? Or did you keep it quite quiet, I guess?
Well, as you know, I was in the spiritual closet for like years and years and years. And, you know, we spoke about this, didn't we? Like that I was watching you on social media and thinking, I think she could help me.
Yeah.
So, you know, came on a few courses, got comfortable with starting to be more visible.
Yeah.
Because I had massive issues around that. And you know that.
Yeah.
You coached me through some of them. So thank you for that. But in terms of other people like accepting or what their views were about this, I think when I did come out of the spiritual closet, I think my knees were knocking together. I was really stressed out because, you know, it's not been that long, but it was a bit too woo-woo then.
Yeah.
But now we've just seen spirituality and, you know, everything under spirituality just mushrooming.
Yeah.
You know, there's a massive, massive shift going on within the collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And I think the time that I came out of that closet, out of the spiritual closet, was the right time.
Yeah.
And people were just very intrigued.
Yeah.
Wanting to know a little bit more. And I think my experience was really positive. And, you know, I don't think I've even spoken to you about this before, but I was just really worried about my parents.
Yeah.
And I think my dad is my biggest fan.
Yeah.
You know, he really, really supports me. My mum rings me up. She's like, this is hurting, that's hurting. Can you send me some Reiki?
Yeah.
So, you know, I am the like Reiki on call person in my family, which is just so, so lovely. You know, I did have concerns, but as it goes, I didn't need to.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think like spirituality, honestly, when it comes to a business, it can really help you. Because I remember it was probably like, obviously I started my business, wedding planners business back in 2015. And I think I started getting kind of more spiritual, I'd say around 2018. And I started having really weird experiences. Like I remember once, like, I was just watching like Gabby Bernstein's talk online and just feeling this overwhelm of tears and shifting happening. I don't really know what it was related to, but I just had this feeling of like I was meant for bigger things. And I just remember like I was living in Canada at the time and like just uncontrollably crying, like feeling like I'd cracked something open, but not knowing what that something was. And then after that, all these weird, like you call it weird now, but all these coincidences started happening. Like I really started getting into, I don't like the word law of attraction, but I like the word manifesting.
Yep.
I started really manifesting, honestly, like I would think about people and like they would then message me. I'd be like, oh, it'd be really great to do a collaboration with them. And the next day they'd message me, or I'd literally like put an intention out there and it would happen straight away. Like all these crazy things started happening. And then I really started to believe in spirituality because I was like, that clearly like I can't just be doing this on my own. Like there's something bigger and better helping me. And actually, I think there was a correlation between like me becoming more spiritual, but then also me making more money in my business, which I found, because, you know, there's obviously a really kind of old narrative around like you can't be spiritual and make money. It's almost like spirituality is synonymous with being broke. And then that's when I really started to get into my spiritual journey. And I just felt like all of these kind of healing modalities, you know, things like angel numbers, angel cards, just, you know, healing in general just helped me so much in my business, because I think as Asian women, like we do need to heal, because in order for us to keep reaching our new levels and reaching our potential, we have to heal the blocks, because they are normally the barriers to success. And I really do believe that. I think if you want to reach your next level and you're not, just look at the blocks that are in the way. And those are the things that need to get removed. But how do you think, like people listening to this, like how could they start using spirituality, I guess, in their business, or even just becoming more spiritual? Because so many people, I think especially now, like I have found it really hard this year, obviously with so many things going on in the background, but I have found it really difficult to get quiet time, connect with intuition, connect with my spirituality, because I think a lot this year has been happening behind the scenes for me.
Yeah.
How can people, if people want to begin, like where do they begin? How can they use that really in their business, I guess, as well?
Okay. So in terms of using spirituality within your business, I think the first thing to really do here is to define spirituality. And to me, that means someone who is open to being a good human being.
Yeah.
You know, and being very open, you know, holding a heart full of compassion.
Yeah.
And wanting to learn, grow, evolve. And I think a lot of people that may be listening, maybe having a side hustle or maybe having their own business, so they know on some level that they're using intuition.
Yeah.
Which is part of spirituality, you know, that's letting that connection come in to guide your soul's authenticity. So already you're using your intuition in your decisions when you have, you know, when you're an entrepreneur or when you have a side hustle. So that's one of the things, but also this willingness to grow, this willingness to let go of the judgment and just let go of what you're thinking, drop into the heart and embody those qualities of a spiritual person, which is basically being a good human being.
Being a nice person.
Be a nice person.
Yeah.
And it is just so, so important that if you are embarking on a journey of spirituality, that you never stop learning. You never stop asking yourself questions, and that you are trying to connect with whatever time you have. So if it's like a few minutes and you're waiting at the bus stop, you know, check your phone, do the things you need to, but just for a minute, tune into how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Because the dividends when you do that, not in just business, but your life, like it's going to exponentially enrich, you know?
Because I feel like there's just so much noise now. And I think with Asian women, like they have so many responsibilities, whether they're a mother or whether they have like partners as husbands, children, in-laws, parents, like, you know, after COVID, I think, you know, people are really, I feel like that people are more busier or distracted, actually, shall I say, is the right word.
Yeah.
Distracted more than ever, because there are so many distractions in today's day and age, such as Netflix, YouTube, like your phone, social media. And I think that that's also contributing towards overwhelm. Yeah. But also it's kind of moving you away from connecting to yourself. Like, do you do any rituals, Kam, like daily or weekly, that really helps you connect with yourself and your feeling and your intuition, I guess?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the first thing is to pay attention to your frequency. And also part of spirituality is just being really, really aware of your environment, aware of what you're doing, definitely aware of how you're feeling emotionally, but also physically. So, you know, there have been times when I've caught myself thinking, oh, I'm just going to watch another episode of Murders in the Building. Oh, it's so fun. And I do. And then it goes on to another one. And I'm like, okay, this is when I start getting aware. I'm like, okay, this is fun, but it's stopping now. Yeah. Because I'm aware that I'm doing this, and I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop any automatic behavior and I'm going to come off autopilot and I'm going to be present and I'm going to focus and I'm going to be aware and I'm going to see what my energy needs. So sometimes it has been, you just get out the nachos and you continue watching, or sometimes you pay attention to how you're feeling and what you're doing. You know, there's been times like, you know, sometimes people think, oh, it's Kam, she just Reiki herself, she feel fine. There's times when I haven't felt great. And you know, sometimes what we do to just cope with that feeling is not deal with it. We'll just say, okay, well, I'm going to eat this and I'll watch this and maybe I'll drink a little bit of that, which is great as a short-term fix, but it's actually going into that uncomfortable feeling and getting really clear on why you're having it.
Yeah.
And doing something about it. And that is something that I'd say I now do. I mean, it used to be I had to set time out to do this, but now it's become such a habit. I'm constantly doing it. If something doesn't make me feel good on a consistent basis, I'm going to address it and see what I can do. So I would say being really, really aware of why you're doing what you're doing and getting comfortable with those uncomfortable feelings, because going through them, moving through them, processing them is going to help you get through the other end in clarity and put new habits and practices in place. And I think it's something that we've all got to do, especially when we're sort of numbing out and using things to help us feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself or, you know, thinking, okay, I'll put a pin in that and come back to it. The thing is being really aware of what you're doing and why.
That is so true. And I think the one thing that really stuck out there was like the autopilot mode. And I think that's so easy. Like, so I've been doing this recently. We've had obviously we had someone in our family who wasn't very well.
Yeah.
And I have it's been a little bit of a theme for the last few months, if I'm honest. And I'm really trying to work through it now. But it's like when you just grab the gumbo in the evenings and you literally watch Netflix or YouTube and you're like, should really be doing something else. But then it's like so cold. I know these are like ridiculous excuses. But you know what I mean? Like that controlled behavior, default behavior, should we say, is just so ingrained in you. It's just sometimes so hard to like, especially in the winter here in the UK, like it's so hard to break. Yes. So in those moments for you, Kam, do you just kind of say to yourself like, right, I recognize this pattern. I'm going to interrupt this pattern, I guess.
Absolutely, you know, and I'm sorry I didn't answer your question properly before.
Oh, no.
In terms of, you know, rituals and stuff, yes, I take myself into ritual a lot of the time. And that could be as simple as lighting incense or a candle and just being present. Or it could be a really, really specific ritual I have done around something I found out that I want to release. So in terms of that, yes, absolutely. Can I have a question again, please?
I think you answered it there perfectly. And when you say like, you know, when you say you just want to kind of sit with yourself.
Yes.
Is it just literally sitting in silence? Is that what you do?
Absolutely. So I clear the mind, and when you clear the mind is when you actually hear answers. So you set an intention, clear the mind, and you'll hear answers. I think you do automatic writing, don't you?
Yeah, do a lot of journaling.
Exactly. Channeling, journaling, seeing things in pictures and then explaining them or making sense of them after, all of that. But, you know, also equally as important is we are human beings having a human experience.
Yeah.
So sitting in that blanket with a plate of nachos is just no bad thing either.
Yeah.
You know, it's just giving yourself full permission to do that when you need to do that.
Yeah.
But then also being aware of why you're doing it. Are you doing this because you just want to sit down, you've had a good day or you've had a bad day and you just need some time out?
Yeah.
Because a human life is not all about spirituality. A human life is about enjoying being human.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and just sitting there, enjoying your gumbo, enjoying that warm, fluffy blanket and whatever you want to watch, and just really having downtime for your head. But also, equally as important is being aware of when those habits are getting bothersome or when they're stopping you from doing other things. There's nothing wrong in thinking, especially, I know you mentioned, you've had a hard couple of weeks.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong in not being as productive as you would be because you've got stuff going on.
Yeah.
And just to recognize that you need some downtime, but I would say fully embrace that downtime so that you are really, really having that downtime instead of any guilt about like, oh, I should have done this, should have done that, should have done this. No, fully enjoy it, but do be aware and know that if there's something to change, that you can come back to it. And it can just be as simple. Your ritual can just be as simple as lighting a candle, having the intention and sitting there for 30 seconds to a minute. We as human beings are so powerful when we set intentions.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I guess when we're talking about spirituality, obviously for a lot of us, like, well, we all have an ego. For people that aren't familiar, I feel like there's like an ego and a higher self. There's these two parts to us. And the higher self is your expanded self. It's your, the highest possible version of yourself.
Yeah.
And your ego is this part of you that just, I don't want to demonize the ego, but it is the inner critic. It is the one that's being nasty to you. It's the negative thoughts. So how can people kind of quieten down the ego, or at least maybe, I don't think you can fully release the ego, and I don't think anyone would want to, because actually in a way the ego is there to keep you also safe and protect you.
Yes.
Obviously we don't want ego not being there at all, because obviously it is a safety mechanism for us. But how can we start to quieten down our ego, especially in business? Like when we want to do, like it was like when I was coming here today for my first few podcasts, it was raining and it was like cold and I didn't have my hoodie, and I was like, oh my God, like I could hear my ego being like, oh Sian, like this is just a bit too much effort. Like you've been on the train for about like an hour. Now it's raining, it's cold. I could just hear it. And I was like, and also I find that my ego is the loudest when I've had lack of sleep. I think sleep and the ego are very closely connected. But I quickly, because I recognize that pattern, I'm like, no, Sian, this is exactly what you wanted to do.
Yeah,
you're doing it, and it doesn't matter if it's taking you. It's not every day for 7 days a week. It's like a couple of times a month is absolutely fine. And I had to have that conversation with myself.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't realize that is just a part of them, and they can have that conversation, and they don't have to be their ego, just like someone doesn't have to be their thoughts.
Yeah.
So how can we start to like really quieten down that ego?
That's a really, really good question. And thank you for your example of you having a conversation as your higher self with your ego self to say, and the first thing, I think you're right, quietening down the ego. I remember becoming really, really aware of the critic. And I think you know this better than anyone. That critic kept me boxed in and really, really disconnected from what I wanted to do for such a long time. One of the first things that I learned about quietening that voice was just to tell it, thank you. Thank you, but my higher self is going to take it from here. So first of all, the thank you kind of puts your ego on the back foot. It's like, what the hell's happening? She's not fighting with me. She's not struggling with me. What's happening? She just said, thank you, but my higher self will take it from here. And then you can kind of, I love to actually use this terminology, zooming out. You can zoom out and actually think, okay, think from this vantage point that is all of you, as opposed to this one little critical voice that is in your ear all the time. And you know what? This is really embarrassing, but I'm going to say it. I read this amazing article in Cosmopolitan years and years ago. And I think now, looking back on it retrospectively, I feel that had a lot to do with the ego, because it was saying that just listen to how you talk to yourself.
Yes.
Would you talk like that to one of your best friends? No way you wouldn't. You'd be cheerleading her. You would just be picking her up. You would just be making her feel like the queen that she is. So it said, this article went on to say that if you can do the same for yourself, speak to yourself kindly, you have got so much more chance of doing the things you want to and getting the ego actually on board with what you're doing. Because part of the ego's job is to, regulate our self-esteem. Part of our ego's job is all around self-esteem and self-worth and self-value, and it's a really important part, but just not to listen to the ego when it's telling you negative things that just aren't true. And it's about getting really, really clear on that. And for some people, it's just about having the conversation like you had with your ego, and that, you just were very, very, you explained things really clearly that no, it's only a couple of times a week, a couple of times a month, we're doing it for this reason. And, you were able to get a handle on that situation. But for other people where it's been rampant for ages and ages and ages, it's becoming really aware that that is just one part of you. It's not the whole part of you. And very, very often the ego is just telling us really false stories. And it's just about becoming aware. And again, taking yourself off auto.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think with the ego as well, it's just there to keep you safe.
Yes.
Its job is actually to keep you safe. And I think as human beings, like our biggest core wound is rejection. Like we all, if we look back to tribal years, like the biggest thing the tribe wanted, it was acceptance and being in a tribe and being loved. And I think that when you have a business, especially in this day and age, there can be so much rejection on social media, engagement, followers, opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think the ego also is trying to stop you feeling that feeling of rejection.
Yeah.
But I think that you really have to lean into that feeling of rejection, because if you never get rejected, then you're just playing too small. You're always playing too small. And I think also with the ego, it is just trying to keep you safe. And I think if you realize that actually it's its job.
Yes.
And I'm okay with this ego, I'm going to go ahead with this. I think that can be really powerful in taking your power back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you anymore. The ego is there to keep you safe, and it's part of us being human. And so we need to find ways to befriend it and to help it to grow. And the other thing that I find really, really helps that is putting yourself in specific situations where you do drop down from the mind into the heart, and you ask yourself, is that true?
Yeah.
And you ask yourself, what is it that I really, really want? Getting yourself into that state where you're coming from the heart, where you thank the ego, you thank the thoughts just for a little while, but you really drop into this center and you listen to what your heart is telling you. And you listen to the biofeedback, the feedback your body's giving you. And I do think that the aim here is not to shut the ego down completely, because you're right. We're having a human experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. But while we're here, the ego's job is to keep us safe. We need to grow when we come out of our comfort zone, but the ego is naturally just trying to hold us back from that. And you're right, it goes back to tribal times when we were all parts of tribes, when we were all part of a tribe, and we all stuck together to keep ourselves safe. So something in our DNA, something that is just, biological, just thinks danger, danger, danger when we're going anywhere out of our comfort zones. But actually, and I think you talk about this all the time, don't you? Actually, where it's at is outside of the comfort zone. So we've got to be, my mantra this year was being comfortable with being uncomfortable. you know? And like, once you've done that and you've got that positive experience, you can then befriend your ego, because you don't have to be at loggerheads. You can actually come into harmony through spirituality, but actually listening to what the ego's trying to tell you. Almost like, you know, that cosmopolitan example that I gave you, your higher self and your ego self sitting over a cup of cacao, having a conversation where you tell me what you're scared of.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know, this, and just trying to soothe that feeling, because you're right. Rejection is, you know, we've all got rejection wounds.
Yeah.
And it's really, really scary coming out of our comfortable space and place to put ourselves out there when we're not sure what the reaction's going to be. And it just comes back to that tribal fear again.
Yeah, and it's the certainty, isn't it? Because we're not certain of the outcome. And when we're not certain of the outcome, it creates obviously more uncertainty. And that's when the ego thrives, because ego's job is almost to control. And because when we're going outside our comfort zone, there is no control. So it really thrives in that role. But absolutely, we can definitely speak, you know, in harmony with our ego. I think we can definitely do that. Do you think, Kam, that we all have spirit teams and spirit helpers? Because I know when I voice noted you a few times, like when there's been a bit of a tricky situation or I'm not sure of an answer, and you're like, just call in your spirit team.
Yep.
And I truly believe, like, I've gone to a lot of readings. I've had a lot of readings done over that. Well, I've been into like readings since my early 20s. But, you know, my kind of the people that I go to, they always say, oh my God, like your spirit team is so strong. Like you've got so many angels around you. Your angels follow you all, like every day, all the time. I think I've had readings before where people have said actually they can see them.
Yeah.
So what is your kind of take on that?
100% unequivocally, yes, they exist. They are there. They are watching over you. They are taking every step of life with you. But the thing is, you're a human being. You have your autonomy. They are not able to interfere or come into your life until you ask. So just wanted to explain for a moment to anyone listening that hasn't come across like a spirit team before. This can be a group of archangels, angels, ascended masters, guides that are on your path with you at this moment in time or have been through all your life. And their job is to just cheer you on. But you know what? They cannot interfere with your life. You have to call them in. You have to invoke them. You have to welcome them. And it's like every relationship, you know, the more you do, the more you feel their presence, the more you know they're working behind the scenes with you. I mean, I've called mine into the podcast today.
Yay.
And I don't think there's a day when I don't call them in or have a conversation or get signs. It's just amazing. You know, the more you work with these divine beings, the more of a relationship and a connection you establish. And it's just a really, really beautiful space to be, calling upon all that divine energy that is there for you. I couldn't imagine not.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing about spirit teams. Like with myself, I have sometimes felt their presence, like my ears are ringing. And then all of a sudden I'll get this whoosh of like cold on me when it's like really warm and like there's no windows open, that this cold air come over me, which I always think like, oh my God, like that's a presence. So if anyone wants to invite their spirit team in, like how can they do this?
So I've made a whole reel on it.
Brilliant.
I really have. And it's just fantastic. And I love it. And whenever they ask me to make a reel for the collective, I do. I think I've got about 2. Very, very quickly. It's as simple as saying, you know, dearest spirit team that come on the pure vibration of 100% love and light, please, please be around me now. Archangel Michael. We say Michael because it's got a different vibration to Michael. I thank you so much, and I ask you to ground us and protect us through the day. That's it. It's done. Because of your intention and calling in divine energy and frequency, it is done.
Yeah, they appear.
it is done.
And then do you ever communicate with your angels, Kam? Like, would you sit there and like chat to them?
Yeah, I do.
Oh my God. And how does that kind of go? Because obviously, like, we can't see them.
Yes.
So actually, maybe you can.
Sometimes visual.
Yeah.
Sometimes signs. Sometimes books drop out
Yeah.
at certain pages. And like, you know, it sounds so cliche, but you know, you are doing things and things happen. So I've just had so many strange experiences, you know, when I've asked for signs. You know, obviously white feathers. When I first started asking and calling angels in, calling in my spirit team, I would find white feathers in the middle of a muddy forest.
Yeah.
You know, just looked like they'd been placed there. Or coins, 20p's were the ones that I used to find, just shiny everywhere. And I'm just like, I never put these here. Like, how have they come here? Or like my crystals would be on my shelf, but then they'd end up on each corner of my bed, like in a formation that no one would do. You know, you can understand that you've got a crystal here and it's just ended up on your bed. Okay, maybe I did that when I was looking at something. I don't know. But, you know, different formations and things. Also through biofeedback. So what you've said, like sometimes I will close my eyes and it's almost like a chunk of non-verbal communication is relayed. And I'd say if I had to choose a space, I think it would be third eye, but then kind of comes down into throat, heart center so that I can vocalize. And this happens a lot actually in my angelic Reiki sessions when we're just holding space for all that divine energy. That's how the communication comes. So it's almost like a downloaded chunk, like, you know, like a hard drive, and you just like plug, and then you get the words come after. So yeah, in terms of communication, it can happen in all kinds of ways, in signs, in that downloading of information. Sometimes there will, you know, there have been some times where there's actually been a voice.
Wow.
Physical voice. And you know, that did make me jump.
Yeah.
The first time it happened, but you know, used to it now.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I know what you mean about the kind of synchronicities and the coincidences, because yesterday me and Dav has been on this, my husband has been on this like massive spiritual journey, and he's, oh my God, he's on fire. Like, he's so connected right now. And yesterday we were driving and the miles should have been like obviously going down.
Yeah.
But they were going up, and it was like going to like 111, 222. And I was just like, oh my God, like this is completely crazy, you know? And I remember over summer as well, like I didn't have any windows open because it was the period when it was raining a lot.
Yeah.
And like just didn't obviously open the windows at all because we didn't have much of a summer.
Yeah.
But I had like a white feather upstairs in my office in the attic room. I'm like, how did that get there? That is very, very, very strange.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can connect, the more we can actually disconnect from the distractions.
Yep.
And connect more with, you know, our spirit team, our angel team, if we feel called to do so.
Yes.
I think that can only be a good thing in, you know, helping our intuition, you know, guiding us, connecting us to source or all the universe, you know.
Yeah.
I think it can only be a good thing, because I think a lot of times, like, you know, people start feeling bad in their business, or they feel a bit hopeless, or they lose faith, especially with this year, with like everything going on, like the cost of living crisis, you know, as we're recording this, the war in Gaza, like it can feel so overwhelming and so much. But I think when you ground yourself in these spiritual practices and rituals and connect with spirituality, it can be really, really amazing.
Yeah, definitely another source of strength. Definitely. And as you say, just connecting and asking to ground. And I know that, you know, some people, you know, I think you just mentioned now they just feel a little bit just maybe, you know, well, how do I know? Like, you know, how do I'm not sure if I want to call this in, but the thing is, we are energetic beings. We are energy beings having a physical experience. So if we look at our spirit team in terms of energy and frequency and vibration, and we're calling in higher vibrations to help with our very human emotions. It can really help elevate our human into higher and higher frequencies. And that's what I've found. You know, it's been so effective. I mean, there's been times when I've been really, really upset and I've called on my spirit team. Honestly, Sian, the next morning, forget about feeling any remnants of upset. I can't actually remember what I was upset about.
Wow.
So powerful for elevating your frequency, you know, which is something that I think, especially in these times, we need to do.
Yeah.
We need to take care of our individual frequency, our individual vibration, because as you know, we all make up the collective, and raising our own vibration is only going to help the collective. It's happening on Earth anyway. I know a lot of us feel it. Energy is rising. The collective vibration is increasing. But, you know, really, really working on our own vibration really, really helps elevate the collective.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kam. Well, I think that's it for today. I feel like there could be a part 2 and part 3. So where can everyone find you online when they want to connect with you?
Thank you so much for having me, Sian. And yes, absolutely would love to connect with anyone who would like to know more. And you can find me at Instagram on soul_KAMI, Soulkami. Thank you so much for having me, Sian.
Thank you so much, Kam.